Hi, my name is Kaitlyn Gonzalez, and my study is over public intoxication and its effects on a college town and its businesses. So, public intoxication is defined as a misdemeanor offense where the person is under the influence of alcohol while in public. Some typical signs include fighting, stumbling, throwing up, screaming, and other actions that disrupt the public. Usually, a person drinks to feel relaxed or happy, and this can lead to something called alcohol myopia, which is, in a sense, takes away a person's cognitive functions such as decision making, impulses, and increased aggression, which then harms not only the individual but also the community. Intoxicated people are more likely to commit acts that they normally wouldn't do, such as driving badly, noticing drugs, consent, and fighting. When their cognitive functions are impaired, they put themselves in a high risk of victimization and put the community in danger by taking away needed resources such as the cops or medics. Not only ruining the reputation of the college and its community, but also hints at some social factors. So I wanted this study to aim at the knowledge and experience of the college town community to see what specific factors come into play and if further safety measures should be taken. So some previous literature that I have read on public intoxication have been about aggression, incarceration, and geographical criminal activity. So for the first topic being over the socialization from the beginning, this literature from Clark in 1975 shows how society has evolved in dealing with public intoxication and how it had a history of recidivism or repeat offending, and how over time started seeing this as an issue which led to implementing treating systems, demonstrating how safety measures began because of how serious this is. Some modern literature cited above goes into social factors such as social control, socialization, and what is considered normative and deviant, specifically in a college town. Being surrounded by a student body that has different culture with different values, how these new factors have socialized college students and its community into believing that public intoxication is normal without any proper guidance or negative reinforcements, demonstrating the normalized drinking and social pressure. The next topic is crime. Brower and Carroll have found that crimes were consistent with student drinking, more so from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., which is the usual time when people are going out. The study also shows the community response of being annoyed and expectant of having to wake up and find their property destroyed or in need of repairs due to publicly intoxicated decisions. My last topic was over the aggression and power which many intoxicated people experience. University of Virginia did a study of the correlation of emergency departments and intoxicated students and found their typical victim to be male, ages from 18 to 24, and close to campus emergency. They also found that intoxicated people feel more invisible and therefore are more likely to put themselves in dangerous situations. Tons of factors go into public intoxication and how the individual handles it. Social pressure may make them drink more than their limit and become overwhelmed, which may cause them to get physical or act out irrationally and cause harm to themselves or others. And using these past studies to guide and compare whether the similar typical victim and if there is a generalization difference in viewing public intoxication behaviors within a college town. I decided the best theories that relate to this study is the lifestyle theory and the typical victim and offender overlap. The lifestyle theory is where the risk of being victimized is higher when the individual is going out at night and making risky choices by necessity or desire, such as living in a bad neighborhood or going out frequently. This theory was used to see if there is a correlation between exposure and experience. The next one is the victim-offender overlap, where an offender and victim share some of the same characteristics. The typical victim is seen as a young male of a racial ethnic minority. This overlap was used to see if there is a recognizable theme of the people who were publicly intoxicated. Wanted to see if there is a difference in the typical victim between my study, Virginia study, and the victim-offender overlap. So I wanted to have a research question based on these theories and previous literature. Therefore, these are my research questions I have formed. How does public intoxication affect viewpoints and perspectives of the community in a college town? Does this differ by the type of business and their staff? And do the acts of public intoxication differ by age, gender, or race? And this is how I conducted my research to answer these questions to the best of my ability. So I did approximately 30-minute interviews that were private, dyadic, and semi-structured with post-demographic questions at the end. I auto-recorded the interviews but kept their consent forms and their post questions. Interview questions were over their experience, knowledge, and opinions of public intoxication. The left interview schedule is the one I used for the bartenders, and the one on the right is the one I used for partygoers. With possible personal questions and risk of repercussions from businesses or personal trauma, I chose a more dyadic and private setting so they can be more comfortable to speak freely and inform me on the population being studied. Semi-structured interviews were chosen because of the ability to adapt based on the respondent reactions. Having this structure gives freedom to the respondent to elaborate on their responses and also gives me the chance to ask unscripted questions about something they said unexpectedly. For example, one of my respondents mentions TABC and how they also played a huge role in how their business policies are structured and their constant training on how to prevent intoxicated people as best as possible. As mentioned before, I interviewed businesses and partygoers. I interviewed 6 bartenders from different types of businesses, 2 restaurants, 2 bars, and 2 nightclubs. The other 4 respondents were partygoers. The decided sample was purposeful because I specifically wanted people who were surrounded by alcoholic beverages or had been exposed to that type of environment. So my sample changed to just bartenders, which actually helped with data consistency. The requirement for the business respondents had to be in the environment for at least a couple of months. The partygoer requirement was having had a history in going out to places that sell alcoholic beverages and being a college student at Texas Tech University. Since this is a college town study, I wanted people who were surrounded by the college environment. My recruitment plan involved me going to these places physically, and after getting permission from the manager, I met with the bartender and set up a better time to meet. For the 4 partygoers, I used my personal network and kind of had a primary informant. One of my respondents told her friends about the study and they volunteered to also do the interviews. And for my 4th partygoer, they volunteered after seeing a digital flyer that I had posted. All respondents participated voluntarily and weren't provided any incentives. They were informed of any possible risks, benefits, time, and privacy matters before giving their consent. The left is part of my consent form that I use, and the right is the part of the post-question form. All notes, data, and other information were stored using the 3-lock rule. It was kept away in password-protected devices and locked in a secure room in Texas Tech Library. Notes and signed documents were secured in a folder that is locked and secure on the Texas Tech campus. To analyze and organize my participants' data, I use Morgan and Nika's thematic analysis spirals, which is on the left, and on the right is an example of how I analyzed my second question. The analyst let me see my initial theme of how I believe the respondents would answer, and then after interviewing, I could pick words or open codes that are repeated throughout multiple interviews, which led me to find a repeated or final theme. So for this example, I thought the respondents would focus on public intoxicated people being aggressive or reeking of alcohol, but instead they focused on the lack of bodily functions such as speaking or standing. So some limitations I faced was my sample, my status, and my respondent comfortability. And for my bias, I would say using my personal network. So to elaborate, my sample was dominated by females, which doesn't give a lot of diverse data, because some respondents mentioned experiencing aggression because of their gender. Then my status kind of speaks for itself, because some respondents got defensive after learning that I was a freshman, probably because they have to trust me with their data and privacy. Then with my party correspondents, 3 of the females decided they wanted a joint interview and felt more comfortable if they did it together rather than alone. This sort of diluted the private environment that I granted my respondents. Then for the bias, I asked people I knew which could possibly impact those responses. So with these methods, I was able to notice a trend in community perspective and how public intoxication differs. The data showed that college towns expect this behavior. There is no difference in public intoxication between businesses, and there is a typical victim. So addressing my main research question of public intoxication affecting community perspectives in the college town, originally believing that there would be consequences for the intoxicated actions was proved wrong. Instead, similar to the previous literature, there is a theme of specific reputation, and the community sort of expects this behavior but doesn't approve. Although it is expected, respondents claim it brings the younger crowd in but defers everybody else. The results showing that chaotic, drunkenly behavior is normalized to the point that criminal activity is seen more as a joke rather than serious damage. Then there is differing by the business type. The preconception being the public intoxication will be more evident in nightclubs, which was then proven wrong. All 6 bartenders mentioned being constantly surrounded by intoxicated people at their place of work, going back to the lifestyle theory of putting themselves in a risky environment by necessity and being close to campus, which more than likely affected their answer than if they were further away. The results showing similar strategies of handling intoxicated people and having experienced that population from most to every day of the week. Then if public intoxication differs by age, gender, or race. The initial theme following the typical victim that was mentioned earlier, respondents were very cut and clear that males get more publicly intoxicated and more aggressive. Age sort of differs, businesses mentioning that a range was broad, but the partygoers mentioning that the age was mainly undergraduate, specifically freshmen. There is a clear theme of younger crowds being the ones to become intoxicated rather than the older crowds. Race was a little iffy. Many respondents tended to avoid or barely touch on this characteristic. Some would respond then sort of brush it off. In the end, there is a constant theme of race not being present factor in public intoxication. This study shows the factors that correlate and influence public intoxication, such as the presence of socialization, age, and gender. The typical victim found through the study was more likely to become publicly intoxicated was a younger male, more so seen to participate in Greek life. Knowing the typical victim and how it impacts the community is significantly important because as a major of respondents had wished change in terms of policies and collectively, was the need of awareness of how dangerous public intoxication is. Now that a categorized population has been identified, it is important to increase awareness of the dangers and consequences of alcohol and public intoxication, especially in college towns where the socialized college culture is very present due to the expected and accepted reputation within the community. And these are my sources. Thank you.